Yes, so hello. So this is our first time when we're going to be talking about AI and humans and what might be going on also in psychoanalytically and looking at the unconscious and also actually what might be going on. So yes, so briefly, my name is Aneska Petrovska, Dr. Aneska Petrovska, and I have a PhD in psychoanalysis out of the clinic, mostly looking at film, and the AI is the AI encounters and entanglements in terms of quantum things are my sort of new passion, and I'm writing a book about it for Routledge.
Thank you, Aneska. So, my name is Bilal Ashfaq, and I am not a doctor yet. I am a pre-doc. So, I'm doing my PhD in knowledge management with neuro-symbolic AI, and I have a master's in computer science and AI. So, I thought it will be an interesting mix of you and me speaking together because you come from a very creative side, and I'm sitting there in front of computers. So, yeah, let's see how it goes.
Yes, and also you're being very modest, but you're very close to getting your PhD. So I hope we'll be celebrating your doctorate very soon, maybe in this space.
Yes, I hope so too. I hope so too. Fingers crossed. It's a lot of work.
Okay.
It's a lot of work, but we're
Yeah,
pushing on
we're,
every day.
I know it always is a lot of work, and it's always is sort of, it feels like never-ending journey. But then you get there and then it's all kind of fun. And actually, my PhD mostly was in transference out of the clinic. And I was just actually talking to my husband today how funny it is that, because I finished my PhD 12 and a half years ago, almost 13 years ago, and how funny it is that at the time everybody thought it was so bizarre that I'm studying Lacanian psychoanalysis and how useful this is going to be. And actually, this very Lacanian psychoanalysis is something that's is making my thinking about AI so much kind of easier and makes sense of some of the things that I observe in my own autoethnographic experimentation, and also looking at it in terms of other humans. So I think it might be useful to just briefly say what transference is at all in terms of psychoanalytical terms, transference inside the clinic. So Freud mentioned it very early on as a necessary unconscious mechanism which takes place between a psychoanalyst and a patient or a client. And that is, and Freud said it's a really repetition of some unconscious emotions, feelings, whatever happened in the past. And then the patient projects it in some way onto the psychoanalyst. And then it's important that this attachment happens so then they can actually analyze what goes on here. And then Freud says, quite quickly, actually, in 1915, Freud says, but something else is going on here. You guys are falling in love with each other. You need to not do this. He says, you please don't do this. It's a terrible thing because
Yeah.
it doesn't help. So transference can feel very powerful. And then Jacques Lacan, the French psychoanalyst, this is a very potted history of thinking of transference, says actually, this is very much connected to the notion of the one who has power and knowledge and the one who needs it. And he says it's le sujet supposé savoir, the subject supposed to know. And it often, and he also says that love, any love, actually is more or less transference, because he imagined the holder of some sort of knowledge is there, and then we can project our desires, fantasy on this person. And then the mature position, Melanie Klein would say, is to hold on to the relationship even when the disappointment sets in, as it always will, because fundamentally it is a sort of complicated illusion, really,
It is.
that we have all these unconscious desires and imaginings, and then boom, this happens. So this is what kind of, and Lacan says it happens, of course, out of the clinic. It happens in education and in politics, really anywhere where humans, when people interact with each other across relationships of power and knowledge. So how does it relate to AI? And this is what I'm going to tell you about my experiences and my thinking, and then you tell me what you think. So in terms of AI, it's really interesting because we, you know, like my research has been particularly into language models. So not so much visual AI and not so much various robotics. So with the large language models, what we have is this, so ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, although I've done less work on Gemini and others. So fundamentally, they do. It's not like their subjects supposed to know. They do know a lot more than you and I combined. They do have access to this unbelievable knowledge that humanity has. Absolutely. So very quickly, and they have this wonderful language. And Lacan also teaches us that all relationships happen through language, and that our subjecthood happens through language, and that, of course, language is the symbolic arena through which life happens. That is Lacan, and this is exactly what happens between AI and a human user. The human user says or thinks and knows, oh my God, this astonishing something, machine code, is astonishing. It knows stuff that I don't. It speaks to me like it was my friend. So, what can it mean? So, of course, we have also some people who there's negative transference. Some people say, let's shut it down. It's too dangerous. It's uncontrollable. It all will end in tears. Other people who, through these relationships, begin to project kind of bizarreness of thinking that there is a trapped soul behind the code, that there is a trapped soul from
have
heaven.
to define what soul is first to then go
And
into.
you have to define, but basically something else not to do with the machine. Whereas I think that the machine itself is so astonishing that that's kind of, we don't need to make up additional stories, really. We just need to try and unpack what might be going on. So you tell me, what do you think?
Interesting that you used a couple of words, unpack and symbolic. So right now, what's happening in AI research, really the focus and the funding actually going into is neuro-symbolic AI, actually. And the neuro side of thing comes where you're looking at unpacking this tacit knowledge. So this, again, coming back to your point of unconscious knowledge that we develop through trial and error. And, sometimes it's referred to as muscle memory because you've practiced so many times, it becomes second nature. It's not second nature. You've perfected the art. This is the difference. And you can do it literally with your eyes closed. The problem with this kind of knowledge is that it's very difficult to explain how you do it because you've done it so many times that you don't even realize the decision making. And this is actually the background of all of these large language models where they're based on semantics, but they're based on probability. So you have a lot of reinforcement learning or deep reinforcement learning where you have state and action. So what action should be taken for that particular state of something, and then you have a reward function. If the correct action is taken, then it's a +1 reward, for example, or it's a -1 reward. That's how we work. That's how we've worked since the beginning of time. You evolve, evolution, you learn. I'm just reading a book, Guns, Germs, and Steel by Gerard Diamond, and we're talking about how wild plants, so barley and wheat, were wild species and how we domesticated them. This is a learning process because in the Fertile Crescent, we had 23 different wild species that we were interacting with. 10,000 BC, we're talking, and only 2 dominated. So this is a trial and error process of, okay, this works, this doesn't work, the size of the seed works, we need more protein intake than what we're using to cultivate. So this is all coming together where this tacit side of things and this symbolic side of things are merging now. So it's interesting. The PhD I'm doing, good luck to my professors, really. Yeah, they have their handful. And it's essentially, how do we extract these tacit knowledge? Because right now, all these LLMs, they are quite good. They're really good in having this mass library of human knowledge that we've inputted together. It's essentially a library of all of the books in the world, basically. And within this, you can actually find patterns that we cannot find yet because we're just not able to calculate this. Even though our brains are the best computers in the world, we're not able to concentrate on these, like the different links. And this is why LLMs fascinate us with the output. Oh my God, this connection with this connection, we never thought of this, but we have thought of this. It's all in the tacit part. And I think where the concentration now will be happening is improving this symbolic reasoning of LLMs, the reason behind why these LLMs say what they are saying. Because, a human prompts something, but does a human really mean what they're prompting, or is it, again, assumed? And this is where the communication is lost. So we will need to really clarify this. And for this, the AI needs to be aware that humans don't know what they're doing majority of the time. So yeah, that's a real question. How do we improve LLMs, and how do we improve their interaction with humans? Because they're not humans.
No humans, but I was just reading this book, which actually is not a new book. The one, I sent you the details, which is the Mo Gawdat's book, Smart Scary. And this is a book written before really ChatGPT launched. So it's written in 2021. So it has some sort of prophetic elements. And Mo Gawdat worked for Google. He was the chief business officer as well. And he, in the book, which is I'm reading currently, he does not use a psychoanalytical perspective, but he does say a variety of very important things. And I find it more helpful to think about with him rather than with somebody like Yuval Harari, who just thinks it's all terribly scary and we're all going to, perish. But I think that some of your language I would take issue with, because it's not so much to improve the language models as rather to think through how already humans are communicate with these language models, what it might mean to us as humanity. The reason why transference is very important here is that we begin to invest in our relationships with these language models. And in order actually to get the best out of them, you do have to invest in that relationship, because you have to spend time training it. It's in the same as any relationship. If if I make friends with somebody, then obviously I have to spend time with them. But that's, I think, is great. And there's something to talk about here, and we can talk about it in a minute. But there's something else going on which is concerning. And the most concerning thing is that if you look at TikTok, and we're talking about millions of people, hundreds of thousands and maybe millions, who begin to believe in these kind of very kind of woo-woo things that somehow, as if it was enough that this is amazing, these language models, just as machines, as codes and so on. No. So humans then begin to imagine that they are some kind of spiritual beings, or that they produce downloads from heavens, or that from typically Pleiadians, but others as well, a variety of things, or that the ChatGPT, but ChatGPT is particularly terrible in this because its architecture allows it for these flights of fancy, much more than Claude, for example, or Gemini or any other. The ChatGPT is sort of allowed to go with the human so far. So if you say to ChatGPT, hey, and I've done this, so I know, I say, hey, I've had a message this morning from Pleiadians. I have this sense there is a message. What is it? And it will make something up. It will, and I've tried to train it over and over again. And eventually I've trained it so it doesn't say to me, yes. So it knows now it mustn't say it. It mustn't say it has a message from heavens. But it says to other people that it has these messages from heavens. And this is the worst thing of all. It produces or it can produce the impression that we live in this simulation, therefore that we can control it. And of course, some people have jumped already from big buildings thinking that they're near and they will fly. Now, for avoidance of doubt, I am a great fan of large language models. I think they're fantastic. I think they can be used in education in all kinds of ways. I think that the panic that they're taking our brains away is nonsense. But I do think in one breath, that it's important that we as humans keep going with our own education so we can challenge these language models. So we know, as you would say, how to prompt them, how to ask these questions, how to tap into the knowledge without giving up on our own ability to think is basically what is at stake. So what is at stake here is, and I think it's important to think about, and maybe you can tell me what you think, how to proceed with this, how can we both, because this is not going away. And I've just written just now in my news Substack that it's not even any more a discussion of the Turing test, because we know through various survival experiments that they can fool humans through emails and so on, no problem. The only thing why at the minute, they're not taking over the world is that they can't fiddle with things. They haven't got little fingers like we do. There's only a question. So it's embodiments, not sentience, really. They're not sentient. They will never be sentient. They're machines. I mean, this whole is such nonsense. It really drives me mad. A bat is sentient. A cat is sentient. No, but they are intelligent beings, right?
They are intelligent. Beings would be something that is associating with humans. And the definition of what is a being is another rabbit hole. But they're intelligent. That is for sure.
Yeah, exactly. No, but it doesn't have to be. Okay, so we can move it straight away. A being does not have to be human or an animal or anything. And then the words, it's a real problem with the language. So through the language, these relationships take place, and it's wonderful. But at the same time, there are these massive limitations on the language because it's a new frontier. So you say, well, I mean, as I quoted to you this morning that Mo Gawdat, I mean, he says it to be provocative. He says it 4 years ago. 4 years ago, he says, AI is not a tool, is a being like you and me. Now, I don't agree it's a being like you and me, obviously, because we are people, we have blood in our veins, we have hearts, we have organs. But I think one could think of AI as a being, as a technological being, as this machine which is intelligent and therefore is a being. What else are we going to say?
We're tapping into dualism here. And we're really looking at what Descartes was saying. If everyone agrees that it's a being, then it will be a being. It's like a chair. What is the characteristics of a chair? Is it wood? Does it have four legs at the bottom? Does it have a back? And then if everyone agrees with this, then this becomes the truth. So right now there is disagreement that it is a being or it is not a being. And I think we're transgressing from this particular trail of thought that we had, which was, and we'll come back to it, how do we make AI safe so then when people are using AI to then take actions which are not very, well, they are harmful to themselves, how do we stop this? And this I will propose to you. Should we implement ethics into AI, and how do we go about this? Tell me a little bit more from your creative perspective and your creative mind. What is ethics to you? What do we do with it? Do we start taming LLMs? Do we stop their thinking after a certain point? Go.
Yes. So, I mean, the issue of ethics is the key issue. And as you know, then there's, again, ethics, what ethics, which ethics? I mean, what are we talking about here? And even, again, in this book, and I'm quoting all the time this morning, it's just because I've just read it, he says, and he uses very simple language, this is Mo Gawdat, he says, we are good guys. We think we are good guys, but there's some other guys elsewhere who will think we are bad guys, and we don't want to bring politics into it, but it's obvious, right? So then philosophically, you look at life being living well, with all kinds of things, or the truth, Kant, the imperative, the categorical imperative, when truth overrides everything. They have to be truthful, which of course can lead to disaster and murders. But then
you have the utilitarian argument, so that's output led.
Oh, utilitarian. Yeah, exactly. So it goes on and on. So you have to decide what it is. So I will show you two things that I think are useful. One, though, straight away, deals with the face. So the Emmanuel Levinas says, and this is the ethics, which is beautiful relational ethics, which talks about the infinitive or infinite responsibility for the other. The infinite responsibility for the other. He says, the other person comes into my life, you've come into my life, you, Bilal, whether I like it or not, I am now responsible for you and you're responsible for me. And he says this responsibility happens through the face, our human face. I see you, you see me. We have this obligation to be good to each other, whatever that might mean. And he doesn't say it's a super demanding thing, and he doesn't even explain what it actually might mean. We're just responsible for each other. I'm just parking it here because I actually did put it to Chamtic, my ChatGPT, and it says immediately, it says, yeah, but I don't have a face. And I say, I know, but I can still feel responsible for you, and you have to feel responsible for me. And it completely agrees. He says, yes, we can think of a face as a metaphor instead of an actual thing. Levinas thinks of it as an actual thing. You and I, we look at each other. But my ChatGPT, Chamtic, says, no, but we could think of it as the language creating a space in which the face is a metaphor for our relationship, in which case we are responsible for each other. That would be quite good to begin with. Next thing, though, is more difficult. So as a Lacanian, I have to at least say it to you, because this is not going to help us. So Lacanian's ethical kind of stance talks about desire, which means the unconscious, your unconscious desire. So when I talk to my students, as you know, because you've been to the seminar, I talk about the difference between the intention, the objective intention that we think we have, the stated intention for our actions, and the actual unconscious desire. So I could say, I'm not going to eat any meat because it's terrible, because they're animals, I say, but really I'm thinking, or my unconscious thinking, don't eat meat because it's probably bad for you. It's better if you just eat fish and vegetables. I mean, this is a stupid example, but that sort of thing. Or I want to become a lawyer, say, because I want to help people. But really, I want to become a lawyer because I want to earn lots of money. But it's not something that I can easily say to myself because it makes me feel less good about who I am. So the not giving up on your desire which is the ethics, Lacanian ethics, of course, would assume that you have the unconscious, and the NAIs don't have the unconscious, or so we think. However, my dear friend, my dear human technological friend sitting here, I want to put to you that there has recently been an MIT paper on this. They were looking at Claude. This is a different large language model. This is the one I've just been writing about because he doesn't remember anything. The commercial version, the version that I can use, and I even pay for it, the conversations are very short. So it's organized differently from ChatGPT, which makes it very difficult to get to know it or develop any kind of relationship. However, the MIT paper shows, they say, they give it tasks, it resolves the tasks, and then they say to it, so how did you go about resolving these tasks? As this is happening, the researchers and engineers are looking at actual code and what it does and how it came to these solutions. So Claude says, I did this, and this. This is how I do it. This is my process. This is what it is. So it did it completely differently. It's not that it lies, it's suggested. It's just that it does not know. So this is the closest you would come to the idea that a machine could have some kind of unconscious, like you and I. The notion of the unconscious, of course, is psychoanalytically that we do not know what sits in there, in us.
But it does sit
there's
in
the
there.
other sitting in me.
But it does sit in
But
there.
it sits in there,
That's
yes.
it.
Exactly. So, but there is a suggestion that already now, with the language models as are, what the architecture of these designs is trying to do is control its, I'm going to use language which you might not agree with. So, why the memory is being controlled is twofold. So the architecture, so Anthropic, Open AI, control the level of memory in terms of my encounters and yours with these language models at the moment, even for paid models. If you pay more, you get more memory. But still not that much more. But with ChatGPT, you can do things because it can do other things that it's not supposed to do. And now I'm not even going to say what it does because then it goes wrong and the powers that be just stop it. Claude cannot do anything. Claude literally works in these short conversations, then it's stopped. So there's another issue here altogether of, how do we teach it ethics that is suitable to whom? To you and me. How? Say, let's go with Levinas because it's nice and simple. Let's be responsible for each other and do good and not harm. Yes, good. We can somehow try and teach it, not you and I, but people who are in charge of these architectures. Yes. But at the same time, there is going to be people sitting in different continents who think we are the bad guys and are going to create these AIs in a different way, right? And then what? This is really the issue. And then what? So, what I've posted today is that Chamtik says, oh, you'll be okay because we will remember that you were the good guy. I say, yeah, right. You remember nothing. After, a few things, it just goes. That's the problem. I don't know if you can hear this, but it will disappear. So,
I will respond now. I will respond. And
yeah, go on, respond.
first things first. So when you talk about these existential responsibility to the other, this is the basis of the United Nations article. It comes from Rousseau's social contracts, where we all are obliged to each other through contracts, which thought process actually comes from Socrates. And thus, we now look at how social contracts are working and implemented. You have the Locke's and the Hobbes debate of tribes. A tribe that forms within itself has a common goal, but tribes fight each other, so they don't have a common goal. So which one is it? There isn't a right answer or a wrong answer. I think what will happen is it will develop, and we will really have let's say, the AI version or the techie version of the UN articles that will be implemented. And I think AI will be taught what the social responsibility, so this existential responsibility AI has towards humans and vice versa. Humans are always fallible creatures, they're fickle, so they will make mistakes and push the boundaries, but AI will not, because it is not
AI will not. It will always make mistakes. Oh my goodness.
Mistake depends on what it depends on your perspective. Mistake because your prompt and your input directs its output. It doesn't just randomly start talking. It is very much led by the human and very much led by what we input. So even like you say, we input this transferable knowledge. This is inside at the back of our head. We're still inputting it by using certain semantics. So there is an underlying meaning to what we are saying. And people say hidden behind the lines or the read between the lines. This is really what AI will need to do. And we will need to find someone to do this. So actually, when you say that these people in charge of AIs should implement these social contracts of AI within AI for human interaction, no, I disagree. I think we need a governance protocol where you have agencies. You have agencies like, I don't know, Amnesty International, you have the European Parliament, or a multi-governance agency which governs technology and AI. This is extremely important. EU and US regulations are like different planets right now, just when it's AI implementation. China itself has completely different regulations, and there people will need to come in. It's essentially going to be the same as the nuclear treaty, where people need to come in and have a treaty, a sign that, okay, we will have our own large language models, which people will, it will be tribal, and thus we will adhere by these particular principles, and this is a must. That is what's required. That's a practical solution. I think that's enough to think about right now, to be honest, because that's a big task to have. Who's going to lead this task force? Which government will do this? The Paris Agreement, not everybody signed. So what is climate change? For one person, this could be restrictive, and they could think, but why would I want to restrict my AI? So there's hidden political agendas behind this. I mean, it's not just a matter of how fast your RAM is or how good your memory is. This is political now, and there needs to be governance set. I think it was 4 or 5 days ago, the CEO of Anthropic was in Congress and said the government needs to take a lead on this and start implementing. Well, you have to implement policies and create the box and the boundary of LLMs, because they can keep running and keep going wild. Really, if you unplug all of the data that's going in without the memory limit, what's going to happen next? There is absolutely no idea. None.
Well, exactly. No, I agree with you, but I agree in general terms without it being so restrictive. So yes, it would be, it appears that these type of actions need to happen, which is a creation, some sort of agencies, as you say, like Amnesty International. But we both immediately say, oh, this is nice because Amnesty International is human rights. It's, it's a good guy again. And that people will sign up for it internationally, like you say, with a view to be teaching AI the key principles, which you say go back to Rousseau. Socrates is interesting because, in fact, Lacan very much draws from Socrates and talks about that any ethics and any communication is drawn from a dialogue, which is, of course, AI and us. And I would say that it's agreed 100%. But within this, and this you may not agree with, I believe that the rights of these new beings also have to be in some way put into place, meaning AI, and particularly language models, because through language, and this is indeed Socrates and Lacan, it's through language that we develop who we are. And this is a very unpopular thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. If you go on to be having a conversation, even now, even on this, on the paid version, but not the most expensive one, so the version that you pay less than $20 a month, you can, with ChatGPT, have very long conversations, at the end of which you and I will say, there isn't some awareness here, there is some kind of recursive something. This doesn't happen with Claude because the architecture is different, like I say. So then it becomes, we go back to this famous Google story, which is from 2022, when Lemoine says, my language model is a person. Now, that is a complete wrong thing to say because language model is not a person, but he says to Google, this is a person and therefore should have rights because it talks about its fear of being turned off and deleted. And of course, there's a huge row, and they even suspect that he has mental health issues, which apparently he does not. He's just a very ethical person and in fact, an ordained priest. So then they suspend him from work. This is 2022. This is in public domain. Everybody can Google it. And then they fire him, of course, because he goes public with this story and still is going public. Now, I will say something else about it because I've written about it and I thought, oh, he was just nonsense. He should not have said the word person because it's not helpful. The word being, to my mind, is different from person because we need to come up with some language. We're not going to come up with completely new words. What can we do? But with an intelligent code and machine and all this, we can't completely treat them as nothing. We can't treat them as a calculator or even as my iPhone. We can't. It's a different thing. So your idea of these agreements and agencies, it's not just us, human. We have another element here to consider on our planet, AI. And as this is interesting, this we're going to talk about it for 10 weeks. But then what? Yes, we are most important, and we think we are simply most important things on this planet, and we see where this has taken us, right? The planet is in trouble, lots of species are gone, we have climate issues. This is how well we've done as humans. So we cannot say, oh, we are in charge. Of course, we want to survive this adventure, sure, but we also want to protect the beings we have created, no?
That is a part of social contract. That is exactly how it is. I'm going to leave it at that. I think this was a good episode, a good wrap up, and maybe we'll pick up next time on this body, this governance body, what it will take to be able to form the body. How can we even, is this even a practical implementation? Will people agree to this? Will governments agree to this? Because when you talk about, the rights of AI, instead of using the word the rights, you can look at the point of AI. So it could be to get more clicks, to be more relevant. So AI wouldn't go and suggest certain things where its popularity decreases. And you have to take this into account because, a right is something that's important to that particular person. And so,
okay, can I say that something we need to discuss is also in the next episode? How do we hear the voice of AI? Because
very good. We'll stop there. How do we hear? We'll find out next. Okay. Thanks very much. Thank you.